It seems like we've had one of these for quite a long time, Rafe. It seems like only yesterday when we were told there was only 24 hours to save the NHS. I think that was Ed Miliband back in sort of 2015 or something like that. The NHS is constantly in crisis, isn't it?
Since I was born in 1976, the NHS has been in crisis. It would be nice to know what the NHS was actually like once, when it wasn't in crisis.
When it wasn't in crisis, yeah. Presumably when it was founded in 1945, it wasn't in crisis for a while.
That first week was wonderful.
Yeah, the first week was wonderful. I mean, of course, we've got all sorts of promises from various different political personalities all the way through. But shall we kick off this morning with the migration argument? Because it does seem as though Yvette Cooper has kind of set a few hairs running. She appeared on Laura Kunsberg yesterday on the BBC Morning Show. Let's have a look at what she had to say.
A normal level would be around 200,000. So is that what you mean? Is that the kind of number?
Well, again, and I understand the question, and I know that you're effectively trying to suggest I set a target or a broad target. I'm not going to do that. We are going to be clear. Net migration must come down. We believe it's really important, and what Care has set out is commitments that we will bring net migration down.
They will bring net migration down. The Tories promised to bring net migration down, and they didn't quite manage it. And, of course, Yvette Cooper didn't want to give a number as to how far down it was going to go or when.
Well, I think she's realised that the trouble that the Tories have got themselves into by making these clear promises. You'll remember in 2010 and 15, it was to get it down to the tens of thousands. Then it was just to lower it. And they've, of course, been held to account for all of that. And I think Labour wants to avoid doing that. But of course it was Labour that started all of this. We must never forget it. Although it's been far worse under the Tories, mass migration started with the new Labour revolution of Tony Blair in 1997. And of course what we hear about is that they want to reduce net migration. People should be talking about gross migration.
Yes.
Because, net migration...
Because gross migration is 1.2 million a year,
That's 1.2 million. So although there's been a slight decline in net migration, which is only about 685,000 last year compared to over 700,000 the year before, gross migration really hasn't changed. All that's changed is that fewer people have left than have arrived.
Yes.
But that isn't actually getting to a handle on immigration. And actually it has to be said, one of the reasons Tony Blair wanted mass migration was because it ideologically suited the Labour Party.
Yes.
Because ethnic minorities vote 80% for the Labour Party. And the two great assets that the Labour Party have are the youth and ethnic minorities.
Yes.
And those two demographics do not vote Tories, so it actually has always been in the Labour Party's to its advantage to have immigration.
And also, even in the papers today, we're still reading pieces written by people saying why we need migration in order to run Britain. And it's never, to me, been a particularly satisfying argument, because it's one thing to say you need immigration to run Britain, but it's another one to say an awful lot of people coming in, as you've seen from figures, and you've told me before from figures from the Office for National Statistics, a lot of people who are coming in here are not actually working.
No, they're not working at all. Well, we know over 70% of Somalis, for example, are now living in subsidised housing, in council housing.
Right.
Look, the whole idea, this model that we were sold for 20 years, that migration boosts the economy, we've got a stagnant economy. We've tried it, it doesn't work.
Right.
That's the definition of insanity, is to keep doing the same thing
It
over
works
and
if you
over
bring
again.
somebody in who then works and who pays tax, but it doesn't work if you bring somebody in who brings 5 other people with him who don't work and who then become a strain on the country, whether it be the NHS or schools or housing or whatever it is.
Well, we know that EU migration and migration from India does boost the economy, but migration generally from elsewhere is a drain on the economy, and it's about time we said that. Now, migration also increases the GDP, and so from a very superficial reading of the GDP, you could say, oh, it's a benefit. But GDP per capita, most importantly, is declining. So the more people that come here, the poorer we've actually all become, despite that. And there is a link,
Well, it's a sort of levelling down, if you like, isn't it?
It's absolutely levelling down, and there's a link to our productivity crisis here too. And this is why have the Tories been in favour of immigration? Well, obviously it works to their disadvantage, given that new immigrants don't vote for the Tory party. It's because they don't have the interests of the British party, or the British people at hand. They have the interests of big business at hand, and it's in big businesses' interest to have cheap labour coming over. We've had no investment in capital infrastructure, machines that can pick apples in the orchards and so forth, because people have relied on cheap labour, and now we're paying the price for all of that.
And big business, as I say, does not always have the interests of Britain at heart. And one thing is to say, if you want to bring people in to do specific jobs, that's fine, but you don't bring just hordes and hordes of people in who don't have jobs and who will never have jobs. And we've got Trevor Kavanagh's column in The Sun today. Read my lips, Labour leader Keir Starmer told The Sun on Sunday as he vowed to slash the tide tidal wave of immigration, or mass immigration. But back in 2020, here's what Keir Starmer said: if I'm elected as Labour leader, I will start work immediately on plans for radical change in the immigration system, no more hostile environment, no more demonising of migrants, but a system based on dignity and compassion. Well, that doesn't sound like a slashing of the tidal wave of mass migration to me.
Yes, well, who knows where Sir Keir stands on any of this. Churchill, he always seems to say whatever's going to get him into power.
Yes.
He'll say that when he wants to become leader of the Labour Party.
Right.
Now he wants to become leader of the nation. He says something else. Churchill once said, it's very hard for a nation to look up to somebody who always has their ear to the ground.
Yes.
And I think Keir Starmer is the poster child for all of that. But, you have to remember, Peter Mandelson admitted to the fact that the Labour Party sent out search parties looking for people to come to this country.
Yeah.
So Labour has a track record here, and I think we should be quite wary about this sudden change of heart and this sudden claim to be fighting for what the most British people want, when we know that he doesn't have a track record for doing any of that. And he's also saying, that he wants to get migration down by banning bosses from hiring foreign workers and increasing training for British workers. One of the reasons illegal migrants come to this country is because it's far easier for them to disappear into the black economy than it is in France. The French are very good at cracking down on employers who employ people in curry houses and these places, and also landlords who don't do checks. We don't do that here. That's one of the reasons why Britain is such a draw.
It's very much so, absolutely right. We'll be talking to both Trevor Kavanagh and Dan Hodges. And talking of Keir Starmer pleasing the nation, he's not even pleasing the Labour Party at the moment, is he? Because Diane Abbott and that big row that blew up last week came to a kind of a denouement, if you like, when on Friday, sort of late afternoon, suddenly Keir Starmer crumbled and said, of course Diane Abbott can stand if she wants to. And now she's saying she's going to.
Talk about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, because we understand that there was a private, silent deal done with Diane Abbott to restore the whip, and she would then retire gracefully with dignity. Instead of that, they went and briefed that they had managed that she wouldn't be standing and everything else. And it was that briefing that essentially caused her to dig her heels in and now declare that she would actually stand for election. Now, up to this point, I actually don't think this has been so bad for Keir Starmer, because going to war with the far left of your own party works better for him in terms of securing undecided voters.
But only if it works.
Only if it works.
Right.
On the pure mathematics, losing the Owen Joneses of this world isn't that big a deal when you're winning so much more of Middle England. But undeniably...
And what's worse is that Angela Rayner appears to have stepped in and sorted it for Diane Abbott. And I think the Tories actually put a poster out with a picture of Angela Rayner looking at her phone saying, "Don't worry, I'll sort it." And it looks now as if he's weaker than ever.
Oh, it does. But, this is one of the things, the last week has been terrible for the Labour Party in terms of the Diane Abbott gate, if I can call it that. And the Tories at the same time have put out a slew of radical policies. And yet the Labour Party's polling has increased. If anything.
They're still up.
So if this is how things are panning out during this election campaign, I think really there's not much hope for the Tories.
Well, the Tories have got another one on the front pages. We'll talk about it coming up next, because it's all about sex and biology. Apparently, Kemi Badenoch is going to be saying it's all about how you're born and who you're born to and what you are when you're born. It's nothing to do with how you identify. We'll come up with all of that. It's all over the front pages with myself and Rafe next.